All right, so as we finish up fractions, before we get into our next topic, we have one more thing to do, and that's the dividing of fractions. And of course, we can't divide fractions. So we have to remember there are three different things that we have to do in order to set it up into a problem that we can do. And the problem that we can do is the very first lesson that we started with. Have to change to multiplication. I have to keep my first one. Same numerator, same denominator, looks exactly the same. That's why I call it keeping it. Then I'm going to change my division into multiplication. Then we're going to flip our second fraction. So take in our notes, I did put them on this packet just so we can remember that there are three important steps we have to follow every single time because I cannot divide fractions. My first step is to keep the first fraction. My second step, change division to multiplication. You can just put an X there as long as you know that X means multiplication. And then I have to flip my second fraction. Now, side note, because you're probably going to need to know this for next year and the following years, is that this is called a reciprocal. Reciprocal just means a fraction that is flipped upside down. All right, so when you look at your very first example that they give you, they're just showing you the same steps. Can't do it, so I have to change it into a math problem that I can do. Have to have fractions. So when I look, I notice there's a whole number down there. Try to remember what we have to do with whole numbers in order to make these successful problems. So every time, same steps over and over and over again. I can't divide fractions, so I'm going to keep my first one. Division is going to become multiplication. I'm going to flip my second fraction. My denominator has to be my numerator. My numerator has to be my denominator. It has to be upside down. It has to become the reciprocal of. Then I'm at my first lesson that we did with fractions. Can I multiply fractions? Yes. Is there anything I can cross reduce? Well, there is. The 3 will go into 3 one time, and the 3 will go into 6 two times. So that makes my math easier that I have to solve for. Now how do I multiply? Well, I multiply across. Numerator to numerator, denominator to denominator. 5 times 1 is 5, and 2 times 2 is 4. That gives me my improper fraction, which I can't have unless I'm doing ratios and rates, which I am not. So I have to use this as a division problem. Inside my division box is always my top number, always, 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 dividing by my 4. My 4 goes into 5 one time, and when I do that, I have 1 left over. So once again, where my mixed numbers come from, my remainder is always my numerator, my divisor is always my denominator. So I end up with 1 whole, remainder of 1, denominator of 4. So it's just 1 1/4. For the second one, same steps. I keep the first one. Division becomes multiplication. I have to flip the second fraction. I have to have the reciprocal of it. I see if there's anything I can cross-reduce. Cross-reducing once again, because somebody had said yesterday, but this doesn't go in an even number of times. That is not what cross-reducing is. Okay? Cross-reducing is finding a number that does go into them an even number of times. These are both even numbers. So 2 will go into both of them. So 2 goes into 6 3 times, and 2 goes into 8 4 times. When I have that, then I'm left with nothing else that I can cross-reduce. So I multiply across. 3 times 3 gives me 9. 4 times 1 gives me 4. Still an improper fraction. So I still have to divide to get what my mixed number is. My top number will still go inside my division box. 4 goes into 9 2 even times, which gives me a remainder of 1. My remainder is my numerator. My divisor is my denominator. So I know I'm going to have 2 and 1/4. 2 and 1/4 is my final answer. Question 3. Can't divide, so I'm going to keep my first one. I want to change division into multiplication. I'm going to flip my second fraction, which gives me 2 over 1. I cross-reduce where I can. Can't cross-reduce on that one, so now I just multiply. And I multiply fractions by multiplying across. 2 times 2 is 4. 3 times 1 is 3. Still an improper fraction. I still have to divide to get my answer. So I have to put my numerator inside, denominator on the outside. 3 goes into 4 one whole time with a remainder of 1. So I know my numerator will be 1, my denominator will be 3. I end up with 1 1/3. I check it out. Nope, I can't reduce. So that has to be my right answer. So now I have a whole number. So we have to remember anytime that we're multiplying or we start out with division, then I have to make whole numbers into fractions first before I do any of my steps. So I have to immediately put 6 over 1. So when I say I'm going to keep it, this is really the same thing because any number over 1 is just the number itself. But my numbers have to be in whole number or in fraction form, so those whole numbers have to go over 1. So I have my first one. My division becomes multiplication. I flip my second fraction. So instead of dividing by 2/3, it's the same as multiplying by 3/2. Cross reduce where I can. Well, I can cross reduce my 2 and my 6. So 2 goes into 2 once, and 2 goes into 6 3 times. And that gives me 3 times 3 in my numerator, and just 1 times 1 is my denominator. Well, as I just said, any number over 1 is that number itself. So my answer is a whole number this time, just a whole number of 9. The second part of the lesson is identifying what I do with mixed numbers, whole numbers and fractions. Now, interesting enough, we had these on the last assignment, and I had 2 people tell me they didn't know what to do with these because I hadn't taught them how to do it. Interesting enough, this was on the multiplication of fractions problem, and I showed you how to do it. So I'm going to remind you once again how to do it. Now, this is where some of you are going to roll your eyes and can't believe that I'm going to just continue to talk because you already know this, but some people in our class aren't listening and paying attention to what I'm teaching. So, yeah, I have to continue to talk. I cannot use mixed numbers in my problems. I have to only have fractions. So I have to change my mixed numbers into fractions. I start at the bottom and I multiply, then I add. So starting at the 10, going clockwise, 10 times 2 gives me 20. But then I add my numerator. 20 plus 7 gives me a numerator of 27. My denominator always stays the same. When I have 1 2/3, I start at the bottom, I multiply and add. 3 times 1 gives me 3, but then I have to add. 3 plus 2 gives me a numerator of 5. My denominator has to stay the same, so I end up with 5/3. It's important to know those because I have them on many of my homework problems as well as these practice problems. So I'm going to keep my first fraction. It is 3/4. Division is going to become multiplication. But I cannot use this mixed number. So I have to change it first, and only then can I flip it. So I have to start with 2 times 1, which is 2, and then add the numerator of 1. So 2 plus 1 gives me a numerator of 3, and I keep my denominator of 2. So now that I have a second fraction of 3/2, then I can work with that. My division becomes multiplication. I flip my second fraction, so I'm going to multiply by 2/3. Cross reduce anything that I can. Well, I can actually cross reduce both ways. These are both even, so 2 will go into both of them, and 2 goes into 2 one time, where 2 goes into 4 2 times. The 1 or the 3's just cancel out and both become 1s, so I don't even have anything to multiply there. I end up multiplying across and getting 1 times 1, which is a numerator of 1, and 2 times 1, which is a denominator of 2. So it's a very simple answer of 1/2. Can't have mixed numbers in my math problem here. So I have to change them into improper fractions. 2 times 4 gives me 8. Then I add 8 plus 1 is 9. I keep my denominator of 2 the same. Start at the bottom. 4 times 1 is 4. 4 plus the numerator of 3 gives me 7. And I have to keep my denominator of 4 the same. Now I have to create my multiplication problem. I have to keep my first fraction. Division becomes multiplication. Now I have to flip my second fraction. That's going to give me a multiplication with 4/7, and I see if I can cross reduce. Well, I can because I have two even numbers here. 2 goes into 2 one time, 2 goes into 4 two times. That leaves me with multiplying across 9 times 2, which is 18, and 1 times 7, which is 7. That's an improper fraction. Now I have to change it into a mixed number for my final answer. My numerator goes inside my division box. I divide by my denominator. 7 goes into 18. How many even times? Well, it goes in 2 times because 2 times 7 is 14 with a remainder of 4. Well, my remainder, once again, becomes my numerator, and my divisor, the one on the outside, stays my denominator. Can I reduce that? Nope, I already did my reducing. If I did it up here and I did it correctly, so I end up with 2 4/7 just as my final answer. So then on number 3, I have 2 different things that I need to change. I want you to do it on your own, and then check your work, and I'll work you through it, and we'll see if we get the same answer. So pause the video now. So hopefully you have an answer, and you've done as I've asked, and we'll see if we get the same answer. So you should start by putting 8 over 1. Can't have it all by itself. And then you change your 2 3/4 by starting at the bottom, multiplying and adding. 4 times 2 is 8, and 8 plus 3 is 11. And then you kept your denominator of 4. But then you recognized there was still division, and you kept your first one. You changed your division to multiplication, and you flipped your second fraction. You have 4 over 11, and there's nothing that you could cross reduce. So when you multiply it across, you should have gotten 32 over 11. Well, 32 over 11 is an improper fraction, so we have to divide. 11 goes into 32 2 even times, which is 22. I have a remainder of 10 with a divisor of 11, so your final answer you should have gotten is 2 10/11. That's all there is to this lesson. Just making sure that you do the 3 different steps. You have to keep your first one, change division to multiplication, divide by or multiply by the reciprocal of the second fraction. So if I went too fast, then once again, all you have to do is pause as I go through it, and you'll be fine. If you have any questions while you're doing it, then come and ask.